We're going live. It says we're live now.
All right.
All right.
So we're dark. But we're
Well, gets us.
oh, it looks good now.
It
all
was
right then.
it was finding itself. Yeah, like that.
I hope y'all are feeling good. I feel better than I feel in a long time. So I hope y'all are also feeling good. This is now a Bridge to a Better World, and right now we're in our pregame show, and so we're just going to do stuff and give y'all a chance to
Gather together.
gather together. And, let's see. I have various wound up things, including a clock. I wonder if I can set it. Let's see here. I can set my clock to, like, it's 9 o'clock now, right?
Well, yes.
So we'll set to 9 o'clock. Let's see if it'll go tick tick like it's supposed to. It goes ring ding like it's supposed to. Yeah, I'm hearing ticking. All right. So I'll set the clock down here. And we plan to be on within a couple minutes. I'll set this to going for tradition. And looking forward to y'all joining us. And I've got it set up where I can read the chat for once.
All right. Well, while that is happening, and it certainly is, we got to figure out a better way to do this part here. I'm just saying. Find you of your tidbits. Find you.
Is that a euphemism? Give this a couple minutes. Mysterious sound. So you wonder what we're up to. You look ready.
It's beautiful.
Why?
I kind of don't want her to stop. That said, this is now, and
Bridge to a Better World.
it's time to go.
Let's see. I got my script. All right, so we're going to do some headline stories. I'm Teresa Mitchell.
And I'm Ani.
Bonnie Haynes, the notorious, the original. And
Except no copies.
yeah, that's right. That's a scary idea.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so this from AE911truth.com on August 2nd. This year, the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia issued a decision dismissing, on the basis of the doctrine of standing, a lawsuit filed by the nonprofit organization Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth Incorporated, also known as AE. Also, the 8 family members of people killed on September 11th, 2001, and 10 architects and structural engineers. They were the plaintiffs, standing was denied on the theory that whereas the plaintiffs were entitled to a report, they were not entitled to a report in line with known physics and architectural expertise. Yeah. So a lawsuit was filed against the federal agency, National Institute of Standards and Technology, which you would think would be for standards in technology. The lawsuit alleged that NIST violated 3 federal statutes in failing to correct its report regarding the cause of the collapse on 9/11 of the World Trade Center Building 7. WT7 was the third steel-framed WTC high-rise buildings. You remember those 2 buildings collapsing over and over and over and over on TV? Well, there was a third one. Collapsed straight down entirely into its footprint. It was very obviously detonated, but it was the only building of the 3 not to have been struck by an airplane, because the district court clearly erred in dismissing AE's and its co-plaintiffs' lawsuit and citing methodological and scientific errors. Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth has decided to appeal this decision to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. And you think this would be a slam dunk because they're just like talking physics. But you know, physics.
But when it comes to
politics,
physics has no standing. I mean, I believe facts don't care about your feelings. No, the other way around, right?
Yeah.
Your rhetoric, if you are the powerful, don't care about no facts.
Yeah.
And if you've got really solid facts, they're probably inadmissible.
Yeah, and notice another thing, that it's been many years and people have grown up with the mythology of 9/11 around them, and they add in the 9/11 truth along with conspiracies, all other conspiracies. For example, it's part of QAnon's thing that they also doubt the official theory, but they doubt a lot of stuff. I mean, QAnon people drink water, I drink water, therefore I'm QAnon. This is the same sort of logic. But you have a
I want just to pursue that line. Actually, I think it's really worthwhile and something that we should spend more time on in the near future, and that is the idea that 9/11, anyone with a conspiracy past the official rhetoric of 9/11, you know, that so many people ran 2 airplanes on precision strikes in a hijacking kind of way, in a very careful sort of thing, while leaving all of their identifying stuff in a tidy car. All of those things that Teresa was just talking about that are physically impossible. Anyone that doesn't buy that story is just considered a conspiracy kook, right? And I think it is actually very worthwhile to look at conspiracies and conspiracies, because right now there are conspiracies running amok. And I saw a little funny clip yesterday that kind of blew my mind in how far amok some of the QAnon folks really have gotten to at this point. And there are some stuff that is just so completely nonsensical. And I'm going to put out there that it's pretty much given that JFK was not killed by a single magic bullet that was unscathed by the time it got to the stretcher. And the buildings on September 11th, 2001 did not fall as the result of 2 plane strikes. Then there was that whole other plane and the Pentagon. There's stuff. But it has been deliberately here's my mega conspiracy theory. It's been deliberately, the conspiracy, the information has all been really horribly misshapen, much of it into racist, anti-Semitic bullshit. And so when somebody starts questioning the official story of 9/11, immediately one is put into this lump that one does not want to be a part of, right? It's like that's a melting rock candy mountain that you do not want to get stuck
it's a generation-long and very successful attempted intimidation by the Cheney Rumsfeld Wolfowitz team that made it happen.
Yeah.
So there you have it. So you have a headline also, I think.
Oh, well, yeah. I just think that's really, it's worthwhile noting because
absolutely.
It comes up actually at this point more often than I'm comfortable with, as people are like, oh, these wacky QAnon folks, and they even think 9/11 was like, an inside job.
Well, you're not supposed to think that, especially if you're pro-U.S. imperialism, which you're not supposed to say imperialism.
Yeah.
But if you're pro-U.S. policy, all of this so-called anti-terror policy is issued from and was prepared in advance with the Patriot Act being pre-printed from the 9/11 stunt.
Right,
So
exactly.
it is sacred now. It is absolutely sacred. It is religion, and if you counter it, you're going to suffer.
Do not counter the official story.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so here's my headline for starts. Scientists have been underestimating how rapidly the Arctic regions are warming compared to the rest of the Earth as a whole. That's according to a new study which found that the region is growing hotter by nearly 4 times the global average.
Is it Arctic and Antarctic, or just Arctic?
Arctic is what I have.
Arctic. Okay.
Yeah. Researchers at the Finnish Meteorological Institute in Helsinki found that between 1979 and 2021, the Arctic warmed 3.8 to be precise, close to 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. And that's about double what the general, horse sense out there is. Mika Rantanen, who is the lead author of the study, told the New York Times that they're frustrated by the fact that there's a saying that the Arctic is warming twice as fast as the rest of the globe. Actually, it's closer to 4 times as fast. And so this is, of course, a much bigger issue, right? Then, because there's an exponential effect as things are warming so quickly. Rantanen said that he and his colleagues began examining the issue after the heat waves in Siberia drew international attention a couple years ago. A year ago, smoke from wildfires in the region drifted to the North Pole for the first time in recorded history. Climate scientists and the International Energy Agency have warned that humanity must stop extracting oil, coal, and gas and pumping carbon emissions into the atmosphere in order to keep the planet from heating to more than 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial temperatures. We've pretty much missed that, right? The heating of the globe has caused Arctic ice, such as the vast Greenland ice sheet, to melt at a faster rate than in the past. And in addition to pushing the sea levels up, melting ice becomes part of a feedback loop in the Arctic. I remember you talking about this feedback loop in the 90s and me going, well, that's terrifying. And that feedback loop is, while ice reflects heat from the sunlight, water will absorb it, making it more likely that ice that comes into contact with the warmer waters will continue to melt faster. And again, feedback loop, exponential. That's why the temperature trends are the highest in the areas where the sea ice has declined the most, says Rantanen. Some parts of the Arctic, including the Barents Sea, are warming actually 7 times faster than the global average. So,
well, I have a related story on that. Massachusetts Institute of Technology has come up with a plan that I guess would require diverting, if they're going to do it anytime soon, diverting the Artemis moon rockets to the plan. And it basically proposes using the Lagrange point, which is where the Webb telescope is right now, to inflate bubbles, they say, by which they mean gigantic balloons, I guess thousands of them. And they would dim the sun by something like 1.8%. Or is it 0.18? I don't know what the
I think the Simpsons
is.
did that.
Yeah. No, Simpsons knew it. But it is a feasible and scalable and reversible plan. It is a plan, which is something. But to do so without international agreement would, of course, be to invite thermonuclear war, because it would affect the entire planet. And people would just go absolutely apeshit if they were not consulted and first and were in agreement with it. So we're a long way from that. But they said, they gave an email and said, would you like to send your comments? So I sent a comment saying, look, that's great. But we know from 9/11, speaking of 9/11, that air traffic was banned in the days afterwards. And this phenomenon occurred in which, absent the contrails, the land, the weather temperature heated, and this is not a subtle phenomenon. This is a couple of degrees in some places, heated all over the United States landmass during the day, and more significantly, for purposes of global geoengineering, it cooled at night because the contrails were not there to absorb and reflect infrared radiation, which radiated out into space as it did in the billions of years before air traffic. So this, of course, suggests, I did not go as far as to say this, but this, of course, suggests a mechanism for global cooling, which is ban night flights. It's a lot easier than putting bubbles in a Lagrange point. So do you want to go on to your next one, or shall I do another one?
We'll go right ahead.
All right. Well, from The Atlantic, Caitlin Dickerson has been investigating the child separation policy for some years. And she has determined, after years of demanding documents, that the Trump administration's excuses about their child separation policy are entirely mendacious, surprise, and it was entirely their intent to brutally torture the children and parents of immigrants from Central America. She writes, Trump administration officials insisted for a whole year that family separations weren't happening. And finally, in the spring of 2018, pardon my phlegm, they announced the implementation of that never works. Of
Pardon your friends.
To go, it just never clears out the first try.
It never does. I don't know
Yeah.
how they do that in the movies.
Yeah.
Sorry, back to the text.
Yes, they announced in 2018 the implementation of a separation policy with great fanfare, as if one had not been underway for months. Then they declared that separating families was not the goal of the policy, but an unfortunate result of prosecuting parents who crossed the border illegally. This is explicitly false. Separating children was not just a side effect, but the intent. Instead of working to reunify families after parents were prosecuted, officials worked to keep them apart for longer. Now, as you recall, we suspected this kind of bullshit was going on, but now the documents are out to prove it. Many of these officials now insist that there had been no way to foresee all that would go wrong, but this is not true. The policy's worst outcomes were all anticipated, and repeated internal and external warnings were ignored. And speaking for myself, as you may recall, this is Steve Miller's big idea. He's an extremely vicious and cruel man, and he intended to torture people from Central and South America. But she wrote, indeed, the records show that almost no logistical planning took place before the policy was initiated. And I personally find it hard to read her report in The Atlantic because I too was forced to separate from my child, forced to put her on a plane to her sadistic mother by a sadistic Portland judge named Paula Kirshner for the crime of being an anarchist. And my own beloved 6-year-old child's mind was shattered by that incident, and she never fully recovered. It's been nearly 30 years, but I'll always see her in my mind, stunned, uncomprehending, terrified, being led away to the airplane because if I didn't do that, Paula Kirshner promised to put me in jail. It's one of the worst. The child separation policy is one of the worst crimes of the Trump minions, and I will never forgive and never forget that they did this to thousands of Aztlan families. And I use that word advisedly because it was racist aggression. Si Vietnam vencerá, America vencerá. And when I say hasta la vejez, siempre, I mean it. Never trust a Trumper. My next article is about protests and
I was just trying. I'm sorry. I went back trying to figure. I couldn't understand a word you used, and it caught me.
Oh well, if Vietnam won, America will win.
No, I understood that part.
Okay.
It was honestly, it was my hearing. It wasn't.
Always.
It wasn't the vocabulary. It was the what? What was that word?
All right then.
Right. I'm gonna go for just a scooch more coffee.
One regulation scooch.
Mm-hmm. Because this is a long one and it's a little complicated. So bear with me. This is about, well, we're going to get into sort of the tofu, the tempeh of the show, as it were, which is high crimes, misdemeanors, cover-ups, dog whistles, and the lot of it. And this is related for sure. So why did the DHS's, the Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General delay telling Congress that key text communications from the January 6th time frame, January 5th and 6th, were deleted from the systems? There's a new critical report from the Project on Government Oversight, hereafter referred to as POGO, which is highlighting the failures of Inspector General Joseph Gufari and his resistance to inform Congress about the deleted texts. POGO obtained a 5-year document which would have, a 5-paragraph document, which would have alerted Congress that on February 23rd, 2022, more than 2 months after the Office of Inspector General renewed its request for select service Secret Service employees' text messages, the Secret Service claimed inability to extract the text message due to an April 2021 mobile phone system migration, which wiped all data, right? So we knew that they're claiming this phone system migration wiped all data. But the document, again, more than 2 months after the renewed request for those text messages, this information had been known and not served up to Congress, right? As Pogo explains, those paragraphs were intended for inclusion in a public report that was eventually sent to Congress this summer. That report is legally required to disclose when an agency has resisted or objected to oversight activities or restricted or significantly delayed access to information, as the Secret Service did. And as the Office of Inspector General found and documented and then did not forward to Congress. So instead of the 5 paragraphs informing lawmakers that Secret Service had purged the texts, the internal investigation report contained only 2 sentences about delayed access to Secret Service records and the January 6th review, and neither mentioned that the agency had actually admitted to erasing those messages. The alert could also have been sent even earlier than that, June, at Cuffari's discretion, given that the Inspector General gives him the power. The seat of Inspector General gives him the power to inform Congress about serious problems at any time, say sources familiar with the matter. Cuffari eventually sent key congressional leaders a letter about the missing messages on July 13th, so some time later. His notice excluded details about issues with Secret Service that had been addressed in the April draft message. Pogo noted that the DHS Office of Inspector General did not respond to a request for comment. Pogo notes that the new records show a pattern of Cuffari repeatedly rejecting proposals to inform Congress about the Secret Service's resistance to oversight. They point to previous reporting about Cuffari refusing to tell lawmakers about various problems and rejecting staff recommendations to review the Secret Service's actions. Liz Hempowitz is Pogo's Director of Public Policy. She says that the group is calling for Cuffari to be fired, saying that his shortcomings as an Inspector General were clear long before they landed him in the middle of one of the most high-profile investigations of our time. She says these failures find Cuffari now under scrutiny from the White House, Congress, and the Integrity Committee of the Council of Inspectors General Integrity and Efficiency, and are why we at Pogo recently reiterated our call for President Joe Biden to remove Cuffari from his position. So, again, there's cover-ups to cover up the cover-ups at this point, and it's getting thick.
Yeah, and to get to, as you say, the tofu of it, I mean, this is about covering up a coup attempt, and all of these people need to be prosecuted. And I don't say that out of anger. It's just that if they're not prosecuted, then the coup plotters are still in place, and what we have left of democracy under this oligarchy is in constant danger. So it's a pretty scary situation if you value what little democracy we have. Now I have a news item about Brazil, and it's about to boil it down because I don't intend to read it. Lula da Silva is making a raging comeback, and that is why you see Ted Cruz raging about South America and communists. He would really like to go back to the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, where the U.S. was supporting death squad dictator governments in South America because they were so profitable for big corporations like United Fruit and IT&T and such. But Brazil is definitely just roaring to the left, and there's nothing Ted can do about that in the short term. I imagine that the CIA has been mobilized to do their usual dirty tricks against Lula da Silva, which is why Lula actually did time. It was obvious from the start, but now, even more truth has come out. He's been let out of prison because it was so embarrassing to the Brazilians once, it became obvious that he had been thrown in just to keep the people from exercising their democratic rights to move towards socialism in Brazil. I mean, Henry Kissinger said something famous about that, and it was exposed by Marchetti and Marx in their book, The CIA and the Cult of Intelligence. He said something, if I may paraphrase, along the lines of, we can't let people go socialist due to the irresponsibility. We can't let a government go socialist due to the irresponsibility of their own people. In other words, fuck democracy.
We know best.
Yeah.
Well, and that underpins, so much of our colonialist past. That is what the papal bull of discovery is hinged on.
Yeah.
That's, we know best. White supremacists with a long history of dominating the planet.
Well, so shall we move on to that tofu of the show then?
Well, we should. I just wanted to say that on the hopeful category of things, as you were mentioning, Brazil is roaring to the left. I hate that word. I always try to avoid using it.
Left or roaring?
It's going hard to the left.
Okay.
I did speech therapy when I was a child for my R's. Okay.
Oh, I see.
I can't, too much information, dear audience. But that said, also Colombia. So Colombia has had horrible administrations, horrible, violent governments repressing their people. But Gustavo Petro has gained, leadership. And so again, another country going left pretty hard, and that's hopeful.
And this, it takes a bite out of corporate profits because basically what the United States does is it strips Latin America of its resources, doesn't even allow them to get the profit of refining their own ores, and make sure that everything goes to American billionaires. And the arrival of these mild socialists means that some portion of that, maybe 15 or 25% at the most, just to keep things profitable, to keep things moving, will go to the people who live on the land where the oil, tin, rubber, rice,
right,
gold, everything is extracted.
Well, this is the story of South America. It's the story of Africa. It's the story of much of Asia, right? It's the story of colonialism, Western colonialism, to extract all of the goods, claim them as our own, use humans as cheap, expendable sources of labor, and rob entire nations of their heritage. And
why is South America poor? Well, read Eduardo Galeano's Open Veins of Latin America.
Yeah, carry on. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, interesting things are being leaked to the international press about this week's groundbreaking warrant service. So I avoided saying unprecedented. I've been joking that if you say unprecedented, you have to put a quarter in the jar. At a former president's residence, as you've probably heard by now, quoting Common Dreams article on the subject by Brett Wilkins, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland on Thursday moved to unseal the warrant authorizing Monday's FBI search of former President Donald Trump's Florida home, explaining that he personally authorized the decision to raid Mar-a-Lago, but offering few details about the unfolding case. Speaking briefly in an afternoon address, Garland said that, quote, just now the Justice Department has filed a motion in the Southern District of Florida to unseal a search warrant and property receipt relating to a court-approved search that the FBI conducted earlier this week. The search warrant was authorized by a federal court on the required finding of probable cause. Well, why unseal the warrants? Well, although Trump has completely and with exaggeration about the warrant service, calling it a raid when it was actually a polite search arranged in advance with his Secret Service detail, people want to know why it was necessary to grab the several boxes of documents rather than play endless legal games over it. The Independent of London claim they have information that the documents might reveal a violation of the Espionage Act, The Washington Post said, quote, classified documents related to nuclear weapons were among the items FBI agents sought in search of the former president's Donald Trump's Florida residence on Monday, according to people familiar with the investigation, end quote. Well, don't they have the spicy sources? In any event, it's unlikely a man as well anal as Attorney General Merrick Garland would request a search warrant for the equivalent of overdue library books at the National Archive. Something desperately unrevealable was clearly involved, something that could be left to the slack security of, as one news source reported, a padlock on a linen closet door at Mar-a-Lago. Quoting NPR's report, one possible penalty for willfully and unlawfully mishandling public records can be found in Section 2071 of the U.S. Criminal Code, which calls for anyone found to have done so to be disqualified from holding any office under the United States. But there are questions about whether that clause could pass legal muster when it comes to running for president. And if you ask me personally, no, it shouldn't actually. The Constitution specific qualifications to be president and offers impeachment as a remedy. But the Constitution does bar people who engaged in insurrection or rebellion. That's the post-Civil War amendment from seeking federal office. But there is no currently any indication that's what's at stake with Monday's FBI search. So behind the sane and cautious rhetoric, speaking for myself, about mishandling public records, is the reasonable, justified speculation that Trump may have withheld. Pardon me while I pet my cat. Well, I have to do this in Trump's voice. Well, I have the top secret nuclear codes. No, I can't do Trump. And procedures bigly right here in my linen closet. So I guess you'll have to let me back in the White House. No one has ever stolen secrets like Trump. A large, strong man came to me and he said, "Sir," holding back tears, "Sir, I am so impressed by your genius maneuver to steal the nuclear codes." But actually, it wouldn't be.
And he was mean to everyone else.
Yeah.
But he was nice to me.
Yeah, I don't like him though. So, but I say nuclear codes, but it's not going to be the nuclear codes, as Ani pointing out to me earlier. Of course, it's going to be, possibly the procedures for going forward with the nuclear codes, which need to be top secret. I mean, this is one thing I agree. This is something nobody needs to effing know about, except to know generally that it is, logical and extremely difficult to start a freaking nuclear war. Peter Wehner in the Atlantic wrote, quote, "In a sane world, a partisan Republican reaction to the FBI's search of former President Donald Trump's Florida home on Monday would be something like this. We don't believe Trump did anything wrong. We're skeptical about the Department of Justice actions, but we'll wait to see the evidence before we make any sweeping claims or definitive judgments." Unfortunately, the reaction online in the right-wing media, even among lawmakers, has been far from sane. It's been unhinged and ominous, and this is something that we wanted to focus on. People are going...
The crux of the biscuit, as it were.
Yeah, they're going berserk. He writes, MAGA world denizens have called for violence and civil war, so much so that the phrase civil war was trending. Civil war was trending on Twitter Monday night. One user on Trump's social media platform, Truth Social, said, "Fuck a civil war, give them a revolution. We all outnumber them. We outnumber all of them 10-1, which is not even close to true, but we're seeing references to lock and load and statements like this, quote, "It certainly feels like they're treating it as a hot civil war. When all this is said and done, the people responsible for these tyrannical actions need to be hanged." Ben Collins, who covers disinformation, extremism, and the internet for NBC News, wrote on Monday evening, "The posts on these pro-Trump forums tonight are as violent as I've seen them since before January 6th, maybe even more so."
And so, are we launching into that, Tempe?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So there's a few things. There's so much actually to be said there. Where is the sudden rush to violence coming from? It's been carefully stoked. It's been carefully stoked since Trump's first campaign in 2016. He has consistently, how's that? He's consistently put out word that to support him means that you will do battle, right? Remember, if protesters come to his rallies, knock the crap out of him, and Trump says that he'll pay for your legal representation. Like, that's where his campaign started, right? So we know that this guy likes to have an army of tough guys behind him. He knows we've seen this consistently for years. We also now have the phenomenon of the Q cult. And it's important that it's important that we actually understand that it is a cult. Facts aren't going to matter. Um, Other outside views don't matter. Only the views of the glorious leader matter. That's what cult behavior is, right? Anyone else is trying to lead you from the path. And so there's this Q cult that's been very carefully cultivated, cultivated, to bring out this very malleable population that has a distrust of the government and a lot of time on their hands and want to be a part of something bigger than them, want to try to do something good, are feeling like lives are out of control. Whatever their reasons for jumping into this thing, they're in it with both feet, both hands, and some teeth. And so when I hear, and there's been consistent messaging to this crowd, and over the Trump years, including closing out texts with key words to them, and kind of giving them a nod and a wink while saying, "Oh, I don't know, I've heard about I don't know about them. I heard they like me. I guess that's good," but kind of always denying that he knows much, while constantly signaling to them.
And the signal this week.
And the signal this week. Yeah, exactly. Is a video that he posted on Truth Social, and I don't know where else, that his team made in response to the FBI raid. So this came out the day after, and Media Matters, a watchdog media group, Media Matters, analyzed the video and found theme music was taken from the "Where We Go One, We Go All" song. That is a Q World theme song.
And that's their signature phrase.
And that there's it starts with a sort of lightning strike storm, which of course the storm is gathering. Another reference to one of their hot taglines. And we also had, there was a third one. There was like a trifecta of, the best is yet to come, I think was mentioned in that video.
Now, I think it should be mentioned that this is a very, very violent cult. They're calling for blood.
Yes.
When one of their members goes berserk, they tend to kill people. They want to destroy everyone to the left of them. And there are millions of them. If we estimate, it depends on how you do the poll. If you do the poll saying, "Are you with QAnon?" you get like 4% of the American public saying yes, which is huge, which is millions of people. But if you phrase it otherwise and just use the QAnon signature beliefs, like, do you believe that Trump is here to cleanse the nation of a cabal of pedophiles, then you get something like 15%. And so if you split the difference and say it's 10% of the American population, that is 30 million people who are deeply, violently, bloodily insane and ready to move at a signal from Trump. And as I've often mentioned, the amount of cops involved is more than infiltration. The cops are pro-Trump. So, and the cops are literally the third largest army in the world. First is, as I mentioned last week, the first is the U.S. Army, the second is the Chinese, and the third is the U.S. police. It's a huge army that kills thousands of us every year.
So I want to run back to that video just again. The QAnon followers, so Trump's people deny that there's any connection between that video and the Q cult, and says that, oh, no, the theme song, it's a different song entirely. It's commissioned by somebody. No, you're mistaken. But the Q followers certainly heard it.
Yeah, they got the message.
They got the message. That's the
I
deal.
checked. It's definitely their song.
And so one QAnon follower said, it's not an accident. The Team Trump knows exactly what they are doing. And, I gotta agree. The Team Trump actually does know what they're doing when it comes to messaging their base. And their base are, these easily manipulatable part of the population that are ready to go to war for their fearless leader.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize that point. All things considered, what has been said, what has been done, how many people heard it, who they are. It isn't just a matter of we're moving towards civil war. Trump is actively trying to spark a civil war today, now. He's trying to make it happen. And thank God, so far, violence hasn't broken out. But this is not for a lack of effort.
No, there was the man in Ohio.
Yeah, one person went berserk. I mean, he had no planning, no organization.
No, and again, is absolutely the poster child for what I'm saying. The man appeared not to be real sharp, and took Trump's messaging at his words. That the FBI is his enemy. He'd been posting on Truth Social about how you needed to go out and kill the FBI. This man, who then went and attacked an FBI office with a nail gun, and eventually, after a shootout, ended up dead.
That sort of thing. And for example, the
Ended up
bombing.
dead. I will say, was shot by an FBI agent.
Yeah.
But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, that sort of thing, including the bombing of the Murrow Federal Building in Oklahoma City, is what is called stochastic terrorism. It's putting the message out there that you need to be violent in whatever way you think is appropriate, and without having the organization, having an organization nationwide create it. You're just trying to see what will happen. That can't possibly work. But as I said, we do have obviously organizations. The police are organized and have national organizations, and they could enforce or make something happen at this point. And of course, there's the problem of the unindicted co-conspirators with January 6th. We know that people who erased, we can identify them. Because they erased their messages on their cell phones. We know who they are. They are in the Pentagon, they're in the Secret Service, they're in the FBI, they are all over the government. One hopes that they are sprinkled through rather than completely representing some huge proportion of U.S. Military and executive branch enforcement. But they're substantial, we know that, just from the fact that there are so many individuals and organizations that have not been forthcoming with their messages to the January 6th committee. So we're in deep shit is where I'm going with this, and don't know how deep and how these things will move forward. But you can bet that there are people organizing on the words, monsters like Ted Cruz and all of the right-wing, fascists who are promoting an actual violent revolt to prevent the prosecution of Donald Trump and all of his teams, his followers, for attempting to destroy, as I said, what is left of American democracy. I'm not going to pretend that we're not living under an oligarchy, but we do have democratic rights. And they prevent large-scale and absolute destruction of, for example, habeas corpus, etc. And people who do not have social status, like transgender people like myself, like Black, Indigenous, and people of color, understand that this is even further advanced than what I have described so far. But the rule of law is being seriously eroded at this point. And when I say rule of law, I mean that part of rule of law that is essential to maintaining civil society. We are at the edge, if not in the actual ignition of civil war.
So the man that was that attacked the FBI office and was subsequently killed in Ohio, his name is Ricky Schiffer, and he had posted on his social medias, if you ding the FBI, and it'll mean I'm on the internet, the FBI got me, or they sent the regular cops, the message said. His posts, including others expressing extreme views, were taken down shortly after police told reporters the Cincinnati suspect had been killed. So that's from a Reuters story.
We can only hope that they're all such delusional and bombastic idiots, and that there will be no organization. But if there's organization, then we're going to have a smoking ruin of a nation.
Well, and we have seen that there is organization, and we've seen that clearly from the January 6th committee that showed coordination between Proud Boys and Oath Keepers and other paramilitary organizations. And so there's the Yahoo troops and the stuff ready to fight for the glorious. Then there's the paramilitary, very organized groups, and they are being signaled hard. So where are we as a society where we say simultaneously no one is above the law, and at the same time, if they could do this to him, imagine what they could do to you, which kind of gives the nod to we don't have equal justice under the law, just kind of at a point, because some people should be above the law. And it never actually questions whether crimes were done in any case. And more to the point, what does it mean when the response is, no, man, we've done the work. We're sure that the warrant is justified. We wouldn't just do this willy-nilly because we know he's ready to start a civil war over this, so the stakes are pretty high. Where are we as a society when that actually factors into the response? Because it was there. It's between the lines, but it's there.
Yeah, it all fits in. I mean, whatever he was holding was intended as, effective blackmail, effective. He took some information hostage, basically, and the U.S. just took it back, and now his followers are going absolutely berserk.
So that's where we're at.
Yeah. So what to do? There is something that you can do, actually. If you know people in the armed forces, or if you can communicate, then the idea needs to be put forward. The understanding that in the armed forces, the people who are actually in on this coup are very small. This is important because whenever a coup goes forward, there's a point in time at which is very important to impress upon, intimidate, and terrorize the actual armed forces into believing that the coup is much, much larger than it actually is. And we can get out in front of that now by saying to people in the Army, Air Force, Marines, et cetera, the Navy, and say, look, this may go forward, but if it does, it's just a few top-ranked idiots and their collaborators. Shoot them. Don't obey them. Shoot them. And because you will have to. I mean, otherwise you yourselves are likely to become shot, or you will become part of an anti-democratic fascist
And so to be
monster of a
clear, you're not actually suggesting people run around.
hypothetical.
That if people are attempting an undemocratic coup, people in the military are obligated to resist.
Yes, I mean, obligated to arrest them. If they shoot at you, then I'll shoot them. But don't run and hide don't obey thinking that they have already.
Don't obey.
Do
not obey commands to an undemocratic coup.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Obey your oath to the Constitution.
Isn't that what the Oath Keepers say that they do?
Yeah, well, actually obey. Obey the spirit of the Constitution, rather than making up shit and then saying that you're obeying your oath.
I agree. I just had to, because it was right there.
Yeah, well, absolutely. It's a good point.
All right. Do you got anything else? Do we need anything else? So with that, allow me to turn our attentions to Jerome. In sum, this is a thing that is rolling out really fast, right? And we're watching it in real time. 7th anniversary, and I was, God help us. Okay, our courtship ritual included reading to each other from. I would read from the Emma Goldman diaries, and she would read to me from the Che Guevara diaries. So you can see how this started, right? So of course, while we're having a lovely anniversary dinner, and there's a pause for a moment, my phone dinged, and I looked, and I saw a headline about the FBI searching Mar-a-Lago, and I was like, "Whoa, hold everything! Check this out!" And we began reading news excitedly over our anniversary dinner. So that said, um, that was Monday. And this has just been rolling daily. And the thing that gets me is how out of control uh, Trump's world is right now. This guy who his entire persona, his entire um, life, his identity is around being the big, tough, strong guy, and how he gets to call the shots. And he finally got into this like world leader position. I mean, incredible for narcissist. Like this is what his destiny has shown him to be, right?
General Bone Spurs.
And just you got to just lie, cheat, and bully your way into the mega boss position. And in there he did. And now, because he lied, cheated, stole, and was even less scrupulous than his predecessors, his world's sort of tumbling, right? He's got a lot of alleged crimes that it seems as though he's possibly been a part of. And so he's investigated on so many angles right now, pleading the fifth 440 times in a deposition in New York around his taxes. At the same time that his freaking mansion resort clubhouse spa gets a search from the FBI served under warrant. And so, not to mention, January 6th hearing, all of these other things. So we know that his first priority always is to save his own ass. It does not matter who else he throws under a bus. And so if he has to burn the entire country down to save his own ass, he's going to do that. He is going to make a damn good effort. He does not know limits. He does not know boundaries, and there is no bottom in the elevator shaft, right? There is no floor he can't fall through. And so if it comes to trying to save his ass by, burning the country, blowing up the freaking world, he will do it. And I think that's something he probably has in common with Putin, who also seems to be trying to blow up the world in order to distract from military errors.
Well, they're kind of similar. I mean, they and their followers represent a
Close.
mania, a monster. And
yeah,
it's hard to separate one from the other at this point.
Yeah, it really kind of is. Except one still has his finger and the other one doesn't.
Well, I mean, it's hard
Quite.
to separate the quality of mania.
Well, that's true. Right. I wish we had better news. I often wish we had better news. But if we had better news, we probably wouldn't be doing this show.
Some ducks are returning.
That's nice, isn't it? That's nice. So I've got Tarot, because when all else fails, go to Tarot. That's what I say. We have for our Tarot this week the Four of Cups, the Moon, and Justice. The Four of Cups talks to us about really focusing on things that give us comfort. Make your nest nesty. Focus on your family. Focus on the love in your life, because that is a place of safety, of security, of strength, from which you can grow creatively, from which you can expand your horizons and explore strange new worlds. No, from which you can really jump off and become even more wonderfully, wildly creative. And the moon, you see the full moon last night and the night before? My God, how gorgeous was the moon? So the moon calls us to really be in that full self, to be our wild selves, to connect with our authentic being. And so gathering your family, your chosen kin, finding that strength to be authentically you and tap into your creative powers, your psychic powers, your awareness of spirit, your awareness of your connection with the flow, and understand that everything we do brings reaction. Everything we do brings consequence, for good, for ill, everything we do. And so
we should
transmission was interrupted several times today.
yes.
Yeah. Sorry about that. This was a really, we're not sure what to do about this. But I did catch that was happening. Allow me to continue on though with this, and we'll try to figure that out for next week. Something's got to give with our times and our speeds and our stuffs. Anyway, so with justice, it's calling us to really be accountable to our actions, be wildly creative, be authentically ourselves, go deep into who you are, with your family, with your friends. Create those ties, right, that are going to sustain us through these challenging times. And whatever we do, remember to always be able to be accountable for your actions, because again, we want everyone to have accountability, and that means we also must behave ethically, and we must demand accountability from others,
Said, I think.
by proposition.
Well, that's it for me.
And me. And so
Thanks for tuning in. I'm sorry it was difficult.
and we'll check out our problematic connections, and we thank you very much for being with us. We'll be back next week.
Our love goes out to you and to all the ships at sea.